night, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast, NBA podcast, Grizzlies Trade Deadline Primer Edition, a short little episode. My name is Keith, by the way. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Grizzlies and their scenarios leading up to the trade deadline. I feel like most people have gotten this wrong, and since I didn't have an episode come out on Tuesday because I was deathly ill, my family had a little vomiting virus. It was horrifying. I could barely stand up, so I missed recording my regular episode earlier this week. Figured I owed you guys one. And again, like I was saying, since it seems like most people are getting these trades kind of wrong or not considering the Grizzlies' position that well, I wanted to weigh in myself and see if I get anything accurate to what might actually happen. I listened to several other podcasts and I've read a lot of the articles about potential Grizzlies trades. I felt like the Open Floor podcast with Ben Golliver and Andrew Sharp was pretty close to what the Grizzlies' needs were and what might actually happen. The Dunked On was close, but I didn't really see the deals they predicted happening. Although, spoiler, they had the same teams I have been saying on our show, right, that the most likely Gasol landing spot is probably Charlotte if he moves anywhere, and then the most likely spot if Conley moves is Utah, and I don't think either one of those deals is incredibly likely to occur. So that's the overall theme, but I do want to talk about other moves they could be making because there's more to the deadline than just those guys. And then I'm going to run through all kind of the Conley Gasol deals I see, then the other deals that I think the Grizzlies should make. It's just kind of the year of the Grizzlies being in the national media. It feels like, again, for a small market team, Sham and Woj have had our name in their mouths more than normal. So the state of the Grizzlies, most people know, things aren't going well. They're trying to win again, and in their second to last game before the trade deadline, their second to last home game, that is, the Grizzlies blew a 25-point lead to the Nuggets. Highly disappointing. The Nuggets were without Jamal Murray. They finished the game outscoring the Grizzlies 50-22 over the final 17 minutes, which marks, I think, the third time in the last 2.5 weeks the Grizzlies have had a long second-half spell where they were trounced by 30 points or so against the Raptors and the Bucks. Can't remember. I think the Bucks where things completely fell apart. So things were very upsetting with the fan base. Apparently afterwards, there was a lot of talk about the emotions of Mike and Mark and feeling like this was maybe it for them and, you know, that the team was going to get rid of them. And again, I keep thinking about this, and as the conversation has entered into the national dialogue, like, is this it for Mike and Mark in Memphis? And I've been saying all along, I don't see a deal reasonable for them. I said it last year when people are like, you guys got to blow it up. I kept saying I don't see teams that need them or want them at their salary figures, and I don't see any offers that would come into Memphis where they're like, this is better than just keeping them and seeing what happens. I don't buy into the, well, if you can just get 2 second-round picks for them, you just take that. I disagree completely in this scenario. This is not the Tyreke Evans situation, like I've been saying, where you just needed to get whatever you possibly can for them. Obviously, the Grizzlies screwed that up last year by not trading Tyreke Evans, but this is not the same scenario. I think you would rather have these guys around just to have helpful NBA players to help build up the team. They're already bad. Keeping these guys, I don't think is going to hurt you that much in your desire to get a pick this season. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the standings right now, I think most Grizzlies fans understand that the Grizzlies pick this season is owed to Boston if it is not in the top 8. And so right now the Grizzlies are tied for the 6th worst record. And my goal for this season has been for the Grizzlies to finish with the 9th worst record. That way They have a 20% chance of jumping into the top 4. They have a 4.5% chance of jumping up to number 1 and getting Zion Williamson. Otherwise, they go ahead and convey that pick to Boston. I'm not a draft expert. I don't keep track of draft prospects. Those people keep saying and have been saying for a while this is a very weak draft. So I think the Grizzlies have long wanted to go ahead and fulfill this obligation to the Celtics and give up this pick now. Perhaps Chris Harrington from the Daily Memphian came up with this or made this idea very prevalent and almost accepted among the Grizzlies fan base. But it makes sense to me, and I've been agreeing with it for a while. Right now, the issue is getting back up to the 9th worst record is not a for sure thing for the Grizzlies. They are a game and a half behind the Washington Wizards, who keep trying to win, and their owner has said, or their GM, Ernie Grunfeld, has said that they are not going to tank. They're going to keep trying to win. They're chasing the Pistons. You got the Mavericks, the Pelicans, who are 3 games ahead. Maybe the Pelicans are a team that might shut it down. But even right now, getting out of this hole and just catching up to the 9th worst record, which is where I want them to finish, is not a for sure thing. On the other hand, moving up in the lottery is nearly impossible as well. You're not going to catch the top 5 teams in the tank race: the Knicks, the Suns, the Cavaliers, the Bulls, and the Hawks. Maybe the Hawks are playing pretty well, but you're probably not going to catch them. So best case scenario, or worst case scenario, the worst record the Grizzlies can probably finish with is 6th worst. And right now they're tied with Orlando for that honor. So at the 6th position, you have a 35% chance, I think 37% chance of jumping into the top 4, and a 9% chance at Zion Williamson. So that's an okay scenario. And that is keeping Mike and Mark. You still more than likely will end up somewhere around there. So I think that when I look at these trade offers, or the idea of trading away Mike Conley and Marc Gasol, when you consider there's a good chance, or a better than likely chance, that it doesn't change their draft position much, trading them or keeping them, I kind of lean towards, I guess, my love of Mike and Mark, my homerism, my fan feelings, the way that I know it would upset a lot of members of the fan base. I think it would decimate ticket sales for a while. So when I look at that, I think, all right, it doesn't make sense to accept a really bad offer. I am going to mention some trade offers that I do think they should accept, that would get the franchise going in the right direction, which is building around Jaren Jackson Jr. But right now, where my head is at, as a Grizzlies fan and as a slightly objective, trying to be a slightly objective NBA analyst, is best case scenario for the Grizzlies next year is to have Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks, and then you get lucky, you get a 30% chance of getting a top 4 pick. A 30% chance is not bad, and that is if they maintain their current course. Right now, again, they have a 36% chance, because they're tied with the Magic, of getting a top 4 pick. So those are great odds as far as what scenario it is. That's a best case scenario. If you switch that with, okay, what if we go into next season with, that pick, the 6th pick or the 7th pick, and then we've picked up the 20th pick from Utah, or the 15th pick, the 18th pick from Detroit. Does that make us, is that a better scenario? Having one more bite at the apple, one more lottery ticket, not lottery pick, but just one more proverbial lottery ticket of hitting a home run with the 15th pick. Is that better than having Mike and Mark around next year? Because I do not think this Grizzlies team is going to go into a 2-year full-blown tanking, go for everything, just bite to the apple, take on bad salary. I don't think that's in the wheelhouse, or that's not in the cards for them. That is not something that they're going to do. So if we're just talking about getting one more bite at the apple for having a first-round pick, I don't think that is best case scenario. There are some philosophically who think it is. So with that principle, I think you got to look at the Grizzlies, what the Grizzlies' strategy should be. And I think what the Grizzlies' strategy should be is, first of all, you do have to trade Garrett Temple, and JaMychal Green for whatever you can get. The reason being, they're expiring contracts. They're veterans on expiring contracts, almost certainly not going to be back next year. I think those guys, you want to get literally whatever you can get for them. This is the Tyreek Evans situation. You want to get absolutely anything that is a positive future asset, any second-round pick, any player you think might be a rotation player going forward who's kind of young, who's on the same rough timeline as Jaren Jackson Jr. and Kyle Anderson, who's 25 years old. So you want to do something like that. Also, as I've been saying for a while, I think the Grizzlies might be better without JaMychal Green. So this is, you could get rid of him. I don't think it hurts your team at all. If your desire is to win basketball games this season, that doesn't hurt your team at all, getting rid of JaMychal Green. Getting rid of Garrett Temple, I think he's a useful player, but I don't think he moves the needle that much. Right now, the Grizzlies are hurting for wings because of injuries. Kyle Anderson just came back, but Dylan Brooks out for the year. Omri Caspi can't stay healthy. They kind of need Garrett Temple, but you don't need him enough that you would turn down a second-round pick for him. You also have to consider that it might be nearly impossible to get anything of value for these guys. Last year, if you remember, the Atlanta Hawks had Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova and couldn't get anything for them at the trade deadline. They ended up buying them out, and they both signed in Philadelphia for nothing, and that kickstarted the Sixers having their phenomenal end to last season. So if anyone offers you a second-round pick for JaMychal Green or Garrett Temple, you got to take it. Otherwise, the Grizzlies should buy them out, and they might also end up in Philadelphia. Again, a team that would probably like to have each one of them. I also have to say, my desires for the Grizzlies this season, probably to finish ninth in the standings and to win some more games. It's personal. I have a financial investment. I have multiple financial investments in the Grizzlies doing okay this season. One, I bet the Grizzlies over. Power listener Damon Rangula was in Vegas. This is like, the Grizzlies over, it's 33. We should do that, right? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I bet the Grizzlies over. I'm also in a wins pool with some other people where you draft 3 NBA teams, and the total number of wins, whoever gets the most wins, you win the money. And I have the Grizzlies in that. They were my last pick, but I need wins there. Also, as you guys probably know, I'm a season ticket holder for the Grizzlies, and I resell most of my tickets, and the more they stink, the more the team and fan base has lost hope, the more angry the fan base is that they've traded Mike and Mark. I'm going to lose all my money reselling those tickets. So I have a serious financial investment in the Grizzlies, so maybe that is clouding me somewhat and where I want them to win some more games. But again, I think putting my objective hat on, I think the best case scenarios aren't even that good where I would probably trade Mike and Mark. But Garrett Temple, JaMychal Green, I think are very movable. And as I tweeted, I think in September, when I was wanting the Grizzlies to be good, I was just pointing out that if you package those two guys, you can trade them for other players whose deals aren't expiring. I've been talking about this for a while. Kent Bazemore. You could get Evan Fournier if the Magic want to get rid of him. They probably don't. But like the Knicks desperately want to clear the salaries of Tim Hardaway Jr. and Courtney Lee. You could package, Omri Caspi, Garrett Temple, JaMychal Green for Tim Hardaway Jr. I've been a proponent of that for a while. Same situation. Tim Hardaway is paid a good bit of money for next season, but I'm looking at the following season. The Grizzlies should be looking at trying to clear the cap space for 2021. 2020, 2021, when the Chandler Parsons deal comes off the books. So I think you can take on salary for next season. And this is a way you can collect assets, is to take on people's salary they want to get rid of. Other guys, Marvin Williams, James Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, Deion Waiters, Pau Gasol. All these guys, maybe teams just want to get rid of their salaries from next year and would give you something for them. The price for taking on $15-16 million of salary for next year in other seasons has been a first-round pick. I think the value of first-round picks keeps going up, where people are still clutching onto them, not getting rid of them. I think if you get down to the final deadline and is someone offering you, here's a second-round pick to take Tim Hardaway Jr., or even that one is one I would take straight up. I would still take Tim Hardaway Jr. straight up, but it seems like some of these teams might be trying to buy off a deal. One that might be hard to consider, like what if Portland offers you 2 second-round picks to take Evan Turner's contract, and then you send JaMychal Green, Garrett Temple for that? I would have to consider that. Right now, the Grizzlies are in a deficit for second-round picks, thanks to trading away their next 3 to acquire Justin Holiday and Garrett Temple in the offseason. So that is something you would have to consider. Again, I would buck against, I guess, the traditional NBA nerd narrative of taking on all assets. I would think a best case scenario for next year would be you trade away JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple for a Tim Hardaway Jr., and then next year you roll it back with Mike Conley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Kyle Anderson, a year older, Jaren Jackson Jr., Marc Gasol, and then we got lucky. We got our 35% chance of jumping into the top 4. That's absolute best case scenario, and that's a decent team. It's going to be tethered to whether or not Jaren Jackson Jr. takes another leap or he develops at the pace that we think is going to. But like that's door A, best case, and then worst case again is not having anything and having paltry assets to build around Jaren Jackson Jr. And again, I mean, obviously, I haven't mentioned it yet. I think everyone knows it. The biggest issue is then you're starting from complete scratch with a front office I don't trust at all, and a coach I think is very bad. So I guess I could have started off all this saying, if they don't change the front office, it's all for moot and whatever. It doesn't really matter what they do. But assuming those things don't change, I would rather stick around with good players than see them go with the bad player kind of hope for something good. But, all right, so imagine you can't even trade. I guess best case scenario is you trade those guys for like bad second round picks, even if you don't want to be one of those people who takes on a future asset. Like the Hawks might not even give you Kent Bazemore for nothing because I don't think they care about salary cap for next year. And again, one of the reasons the Grizzlies don't care about salary cap or should not care about salary cap space for next season is the entire NBA will have salary cap space. Thus, it makes the Grizzlies' small amount of possible salary cap space not very valuable. It pretty much makes them, it almost ensures that they will sign a bad deal. And I think the teams that don't give out big contracts next year are going to be at an advantage. You see it right now with teams that signed terrible 2016 contracts that they wish they did not, like the Portland Trailblazers, the Allen Crabbe deals of the world, the Mozgovs, the Biombos, the Luol Dangs, all of these the Jan Mahinmis type things, Solomon Hill, all these contracts. I'm not even mentioning the Grizzlies. I refuse to. But all these contracts they wish they didn't give out. So that is why I think the Grizzlies should use their future cap space for next year by taking on bad salaries and hoping to get some assets for that, because I don't think they're going to be able to find deals next year that are going to be at their peak when Jaren Jackson Jr. is at his peak. I think that's the key. Again, the guiding principle to the Grizzlies is we need to maximize like years 3 and 4 of Jaren Jackson Jr. when he starts getting really, really good. That should be the goal. So looking at that, looking at the confusion over, we don't know what the draft pick's going to be. We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know if we can even move JaMychal Green or Garrett Temple for anything. Let's look at some of those Mike and Mark possible deals. So here are the only possible scenarios I can imagine. I'm going to start with Mike Conley, because Mike Conley, I think, is the better asset for teams because he has future salary. And before I get to, I guess, the 5 teams that I think possibly could make a trade, and again, I'm going to emphasize how little I think many of these will have any chance of occurring. What I consider as a Grizzlies fan is right now trading Mike Conley, where he is actually viewed as a positive asset, a somewhat positive asset, I still consider to be a small win. With his chronic foot Achilles pain that he has, and with the contract that was signed a couple years ago, I think the real concern was at the late years of his contract, this will just be a negative asset, and the Grizzlies will have nothing they can do with it. Well, he's put together a pretty solid year so far. I don't know if he's even been as good as his numbers look like so far this season, but he's put together a pretty solid year, and if you can move him while he's still viewed as a positive asset, that's a minor victory. But again, I will feel sad. Talking out of both sides of my mouth, I would like to see Mike Conley retire as a Grizzly. When they made the playoffs, I think in like 2012, I bought a Mike Conley shirt. It was the first like Grizzlies player shirt I ever bought, and my reasoning was, I think this guy has the chance of being on the team the longest, looking at the roster. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to buy my Conley shirt so it'll never go out of style. So far, not out of style, but I'm getting nervous. All right, so here are teams that I think might trade for him. The Detroit Pistons. And now I think this deal is incredibly unlikely. If I was running the Detroit Pistons, I don't think I would do it. But if they want to maximize Blake Griffin's time, he has, another probably good year or two, you might as well pair him up with Mike Conley. Why waste it? If they want to go for the playoffs this season, if they would offer Reggie Jackson, that gets the Pistons off Reggie Jackson's deal, if they would offer Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, John Lure, and then their pick this season, I think you could top 10 protected, so the Pistons think that they can get out of that, because right now the Pistons are in the lottery. If they can make a playoff push, you maximize this team, then you have Mike Conley, Blake Griffin, and Andre Drummond, and you get Reggie Bullock there. You got some okay-ish wings. I think that team is going to be pretty good. The Grizzlies are taking on a bunch of negative salary for next year. That's John Lure's $10 million, Reggie Jackson's $17 million. I think that's got to be worth a first-round pick for them to get Mike Conley and get off those contracts. Again, I don't think this will happen. I think it's an unlikely deal, but it's one I would consider. If I'm the Grizzlies, if they offered it to me, I would have to consider it. And if I'm the Pistons, it makes sense to me. The Pistons can, go all in. Another one, I will say, by the way, with the Pistons, worst case scenario is they offer Andre Drummond for Marc Gasol, and that is the kind of deal I can see Chris Wallace accepting. I don't want any business accepting Andre Drummond. That seems crazy. Also, another one that isn't realistic, but I've heard mentioned, I think Andrew Sharp, again on the Open Floor podcast, was joking if they offer John Wall for Mike Conley or John Wall for Marc Gasol. No. These bloated, huge contracts, I'm not interested in them. I don't want the Grizzlies to be mediocre good with new players. I am okay with them being mediocre good with the guys I love. But also guys whose contracts I know when the end is near. I don't want any part of those other people. Another one, which I mentioned before the Oladipo injury, is the Pacers. I don't think this makes sense for the Pacers at all anymore, to be clear. But if the Pacers offered Darren Collison, Tyreek Evans, who the Grizzlies would probably immediately buy out to avoid the awkwardness, and Aaron Holiday and their 2019 first, which again is not going to be very good, like in the 20s, that makes sense to me on one hand, where you replace Oladipo and you maintain your standing for this season. You make a little playoff run, probably not going to win a first-round series. But then if you're the Indiana and you think that you can't add a big-name free agent with your cap space next year, you go ahead and preemptively make Mike Conley your free agent acquisition. And then, you sell that. Conley's from Indiana. You have a Conley Oladipo, if healthy, going next season. You got that team with Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. That's a pretty awesome team. That's kind of fun. Would I do it? If I'm the Grizzlies, I would think hard about accepting that deal. If I'm the Pacers, I do not do it. I would have done it before Oladipo because I think that made them a strong squad. It could have solidified them to winning a playoff round. But I could imagine in a scenario where someone would do it. I just, again, think it's highly unlikely. The Magic. So the Orlando Magic, if they want to finally lock down a point guard, maybe they would trade Terrence Ross, Mozgov's salary, and I don't know what. I mean, they wouldn't. I don't think they'd give you a first-round pick, maybe a deep future first-round pick. Again, this is highly unlikely, but it's one of the only ones I can think of. I think slightly more likely, Phoenix Suns. What if the Phoenix Suns wanted to finally get a veteran leader with some winning pedigree? All apologies to Trevor Ariza and Tyson Chandler. What if they wanted to bring one of these guys in and go ahead, again, pre-use their cap space, get a guy who fits nicely in the backcourt alongside Devin Booker? If the Suns were to offer TJ Warren, who's a very good player, but maybe doesn't fit completely in with the Suns' plans. If they offered TJ Warren and then Ryan Anderson's contract, which is bad, it's I think $14 million of dead money, or on the books for next year. If they offered those guys and even like a second round pick, I would think long and hard about that as the Grizzlies, just to get a scoring like 3-4 in TJ Warren, a guy who's added the 3-point shot to his game this season. Again, not a good rebounder. Does a future Grizzlies team of a front court of Kyle Anderson, TJ Warren, and Jaren Jackson Jr., it's interesting, but it also might not get any rebounds. So I don't love that, but I would think long and hard about that if Suns would include some deep future first-round pick, or include like a D'Anthony Melton, another youngish player. I'd consider it. Would the Suns do it? Maybe the front office would. A lot of their fans and bloggers would not. Some would, who are impatient of all the losing. So that one is like mildly, vaguely possible, but again, unlikely. And then again, the most likely, and the one I like the best, it's the same one that Open Floor chose, is the same one that the Dunked On podcast chose, is the Utah Jazz. I think the Utah Jazz making a move for Mike Conley makes a lot of sense for the same reasons we mentioned with the Pacers, with the Suns. If they don't know who they're going to sign next year, a Conley Donovan Mitchell backcourt seems awesome to me. Having Conley be the secondary scorer on that, it seems great. We mentioned on our show last week, like Derek Favors and Dante Exum and a lottery protected first, which is probably the 20th pick this season. That's one of the Grizzlies I would probably try to accept. If it was Rubio, Exum, and Grayson Allen in a first, that's one you could sell to your Grizzlies fan base. Everyone loves to hate Grayson Allen, probably unless he's on your team. Do I think Grayson Allen is good? No. Do I think Dante Exum is good? I'm not really sure. I think he's chronically injured. I don't love the idea of getting him. I would almost prefer a Rubio, Favors, Grayson Allen, and a first. That is a very, very strong offer that I think the Jazz would possibly do that. But complicating this, so that's the most likely deal, is working out something with the Jazz. But complicating that is, what if the Jazz prefer to add a big forward, like an Otto Porter, or even an Aaron Gordon? What if they make the same or similar deals to the Wizards, who might be wanting to unload salary? They should be looking to unload salary. Or the Magic, if the Jazz offer a first-round pick and Dante Exum, and Favors, would the Magic prefer that, to unload Aaron Gordon? Or would the Wizards look to do that? Because then they could opt out of Favors' contract and get a first-round pick. So I don't know if the Jazz are picking, if it's a similar offer, you can get Mike Conley, Aaron Gordon, or Otto Porter. I don't know what the Jazz choose to do. But so that's the most likely deal I can see. There's been some talk about the Mavericks trading for Mike Conley. That doesn't make sense to me at all. Maybe that's the one that happens. But again, the most likely deal I can come up with, and then I think other people have come up with, is the Utah Jazz. And is it more than likely to happen? I don't think so. So that's kind of why I don't think a trade is likely to happen for Mike Conley. So then let's look at Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol, who has a player option for next year for $25 million. As a Grizzlies fan, I've been saying all along, I assumed he would exercise that option and stay in Memphis. Now there's been talk, that maybe he's happy with moving, but he's also publicly said he's happy with staying. He says whatever is best for the team. If the team can get good assets, this is Marc Gasol, he says this, that he understands they have to move him. But I don't see any teams that would trade for him. The only ones that I can theoretically come up with are the Charlotte Hornets, which again, other people have pointed out, or the Washington Wizards, if they just want to do a salary dump and get Marc Gasol to opt out. I think the Wizards one is a long shot. It's a long shot. They haven't shown me that they're a team that, does these kind of dunked on salary cap guru moves just to move around salary. I think it makes sense if they want to send Jan Mahinmi and, Marcus Morris, who's hurt, just for the salary, just for the savings, and then trade a first round pick. The Washington Wizards have been trading away all these first round picks. So I don't think they want to keep doing that. I don't think multiple seconds even gets it done. So like I can't imagine that would happen. So that goes for the Charlotte Hornets. I think the dunked on offer was a Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and who has a player option for next year for $13 million, and Biyombo, who has $17 million on the book for next year. So that's taking on massive salary to the Grizzlies. And then the Hornets get Marc Gasol, who I think is a great pickup for them. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. The Hornets want to solidify themselves as a playoff team this year, which they're currently, set as like they're right there. I think they're the 8th seed in the East as I'm talking on Wednesday morning. I think it makes sense to them. I would push back. I think you could get Frank Kaminsky, who they're not playing right now, who's going to be a restricted free agent. I think the Grizzlies should definitely get Frank Kaminsky back in a deal like this. I think they should also ask for Malik Monk, who might not be any good, and I don't think the Hornets care too much about losing him. Maybe he is just a gunner, but he's a young guy. As a Grizzlies fan, what I would ask for is I would say give us Biyombo, Frank Kaminsky, Malik Monk, and your first-round pick, lottery protected this season for Marc Gasol. Maybe the Hornets want Marc Gasol to opt in next year. Maybe they want him to opt out. I don't even know in that scenario, but I think that's a fair deal. That's Charlotte, who again, I don't know if I'd do it if I was Charlotte, but knowing their ownership maybe values just regular season winning and trying to succeed in the playoffs, that deal makes sense to me. And it is the only deal that vaguely makes sense. If the Hornets offer the deal that was the dunked on deal, like the Biyombo and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist for next year, no, I would not accept that for the 17th pick in this year's draft. I would rather have Marc Gasol be around to tutor Jaren Jackson Jr. and to just play basketball games. I would rather Marc Gasol be a Memphis Grizzly than accept the 17th, 16th pick in this year's draft. And maybe that is where I'm too biased to look at it objectively. But I think there's more value added by Marc Gasol being on your team and teaching, the players. I know in the echo chamber that is Grizzlies Twitter, people get frustrated with Marc Gasol, and I think it's slightly misplaced. Like he got a triple double, recently, and everyone's like, "Why doesn't he play like that all the time?" It's not effort. It isn't effort that Marc Gasol doesn't get a triple double every night. That would mean that like Marc Gasol is one of the 5 best players in the NBA. He's not. Like guys can't do it every night. Some nights their shots are going in. Some nights they're really clicked in on defense. It doesn't happen. Like Marc Gasol is still a winning basketball player. I still think he helps you win basketball games. He's fine. The difficulty is, right now Mike and Mark are like options 1A and 1B on offense, and that just isn't good enough. I would like to see Gasol fall back to being a 3rd or 4th option. That would be ideal for me. So I would rather keep Marc Gasol. Ideally, he would opt out next year and he would re-sign for a little bit less. Like for me, that's best case scenario. And again, the Grizzlies winning the lottery, like those are best case scenarios. So like looking at these trades, if Marc Gasol promised to opt out, I guess you could, envision like the Mavericks doing it, or, if they want to trade DeAndre Jordan, but they already have DeAndre Jordan, expiring, or like the Lakers or the Clippers. If the Clippers got crazy, like what if Jerry West offers Danilo Gallinari just to get off the contract because he wants to make a big free agent offer next year, and he'll accept Marc Gasol, if Marc Gasol promises he's opting out. And again, I guess I should say, changing the calculus for the Grizzlies, if Marc Gasol has told the Grizzlies in private he is opting out, well, that changes everything. Well, then you can trade him for whatever you get. But again, I don't see any teams they're going to even offer like a couple second-round picks, because accepting $24 million worth of salary onto your team is not easy to do. It's not easy to work out logistically to match the contracts. So I can't imagine any of these Gasol deals happening. So that is why, again, I've been saying I don't think any of these deals are very likely. And I don't want Grizzlies fans to be upset after the trade deadline passes. I certainly won't be if Mike and Mark are still Grizzlies, because I don't think these deals make a whole ton of sense for the Grizzlies. I do think, I guess, final note, other bit of business the Grizzlies should be doing is probably looking to trade Justin Holiday. He can't be he can't be combined with other players in a trade, although he can be absorbed into teams if they have trade exceptions, which is why, again, on the Dunked On fake trade, Justin Holiday was part of that deal because he could go to the Hornets. But like Justin Holiday, you could probably trade straight up for guys on expiring, on rookie deals. The salaries match guys who are going into restricted free agency. And the one who I'm looking at, who I think this deal would make sense for both teams, is you could trade Justin Holiday for Trey Lyles for the Nuggets. The Nuggets would likely do that. And Trey Lyles, because they're not going to re-sign Trey Lyles next year. They don't have the salary cap room. And he's vaguely out of the rotation. They might rather have Justin Holiday available to play on the wing. Again, mentioned Frank the Foreman Kaminsky for the Hornets. You could trade Justin Holiday straight up for Frank Kaminsky, get a look at him. The Pistons might trade you Stanley Johnson, who again is probably not any good, but if you get a look at Stanley Johnson, just another young player, it might make more sense than just to have Justin Holiday on your roster as the season expires. Again, if a Sixers or... trying to think of another team that needs a shooter. Like I'm mainly thinking the Sixers, if they would give you a second-round pick for Justin Holiday, you would do it. You're not getting your second-round picks back. Your 2 second-round picks that you sent. Your 2 high second-round picks that you sent to the Bulls for Justin Holiday. But you got to try at least. All right, so this went on longer than I thought it would. But I wanted to spell out that I don't think any of these trades are very likely. With my luck, perhaps Mike and Mark get traded today. Before I even post this episode in the next 5 minutes. But that's your, I think, entire Grizzlies trade deadline primer. They should be taken on salary for next season and getting assets if they can. They should absolutely be trading JaMychal Green, Justin Holiday, and Garrett Temple for whatever they can possibly get. And I think the Conley deals are very unlikely. I would accept a deal from the Jazz that was, probably Favors, Rubio, and a first-round pick, and maybe Grayson Allen. I would, accept a deal from the Hornets that was Monk, Biyombo, Kaminsky, and a first. And I would accept a first-round pick from the Blazers to eat Evan Turner's salary in exchange for JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple. But again, I don't think any of these deals are even probable. So, sorry, Grizz fans. Let's just cross our fingers that we can hit that Grizzlies over and then win the lottery from that 9 spot. Oh, yeah, baby. That'll be lots of fun. All right. Thanks for all of you who made it to the end of this. If you want to support our show, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. You can follow me on Twitter at fastbreakbreak. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You guys are the best. Thanks for listening. And remember, breakfast is the most important thing.
Yeah, never apologize for being G&G. Fast break, man. You understand?